Hey gang, this is Patrick in the woods of Mifune, and today we're talking about Furoku Manga on Gaijin Gai. To celebrate breaching the 50 subscriber barrier, I started a new series with Gaijin Gai, the JINGAICLOPEDIA. Short videos to explain different concepts we'll be exploring on Gaijin Gai. This time we're looking at Furoku Manga, those special incentives that get little comic consumers to part with their pocket change. I remember when my granddad, Happy Washburn, from Trinity, Texas, complained when I wanted to get Apple Jacks instead of Post Toasties because Apple Jacks were about twice as expensive. You're basically paying extra for the free toy, he said, but at 7 years old, I didn't care. I had yet to look at things from an economic perspective, so, free was free. Now it's a gazillion years later and I still get suckered in by free crap. I don't normally buy weekly or monthly manga anthologies, but if they have something cool like flimsy acetate bookmarks, well, what the hell? Now, Furoku Manga have been around for quite a while, and we don't always know which comics were published in the main mag and which were extra. I'm not sure which is more prestigious. I mean, people didn't always hang on to the thick monthlies or weeklies, and it must have been much easier to hang on to these little guys. Remember that we didn't have the tankobon reprint market until much later, so unless you cut up your anthology mags, as some did, these were much easier to collect. Okay, let's go ahead and jump in. Most Furoku manga that I've seen are the size called Sho Birokuhan. It's 112 by 174 centimeters. It's the size that is used for shonen shoujo comics. And as you can see, Furoku comics almost exactly the same size. A little bit of a discrepancy, but actually each printer or each publisher has slightly different sizes for their comics as well. Anyway, this Sho Birokuhan, the show comes from Shonen Shoujo. It's also sometimes called Shin Shohan or B40Han, and it's according to a manga researcher Yamamori Hiroshi of Kansai Gakuin University. This smaller size apparently came into use around 1954, just as the print industry was going into a slump. It was cheaper because the paper was smaller. The large sheet was smaller, and a good size for kids to lug around. And from 1966 became the standard for tankobon. But here's the thing, it's something that we don't often think about. There were no tankobon like the image that we have of tankobon back in the late 50s and early 60s. What did kids have? How could they collect comics? They'd either have to cut out the sections that they wanted to save, or they could have these handy dandy little mini comics which would come in the magazines every month, and they could save those. Okay, so over here we have some Furoku manga. We're not going to go through all these today. I'm going to save that for a very special read through that we're going to do in a future episode of Gaijin Gai. But let's just talk a little bit about what they look like. So usually very thin, often one story, okay, but sometimes more than one. So this has one story in the beginning, different story in the back. You've also got Furoku like this. Look how huge that is. And this has several stories. Usually, like these two right here, these both came in the same issue of Hinomaru, and these are New Year's issues. So New Year's issues often had tons of Furoku because this would be like a special sized issue, and kids had money because they were getting their New Year's otoshidama cash from relatives in the little envelopes, and they had money to burn, money to spend. So these New Year's Furoku would often have, I don't know if this has a listing, I think this had a listing of a bunch of different Furoku in the same magazine. That's it for this episode of the JINGAICLOPEDIA. I hope to cover more topics in future episodes. And while I've got your attention, I'd like to thank all the wonderful new subscribers who have joined me on the channel. Thank you so much for coming. I'm doing this for you guys. So if you have any comments or suggestions or any topics, especially that you'd like me to cover in the JINGAICLOPEDIA, just, let me know. See you guys next time. I need an ending catchphrase, don't you think?